black history, ain't no black history. This ain't black history, this ain't that you'll see. They don't know about me, you don't know about me. They gon' know about me, you gon' know about me. See, I am not a slave, I was born to slide, I am not afraid. Hop about the K, oh yeah, free to God, they went out of state. I'm a child of God, I do not belong to the United States. Fuck black history, tell Uncle Sam he can catch a fade. I went to hell, school, graduated at the top of my class. Still never thought I was over my peers. We did that time together 12 years. Ain't that some movie? I think that it is. They won't control me, I'm really a member. I traveled that road, I came back with the jewels from. When I pull up, they peep how the rules gone. We some dog killers, won't chew bones. Know we all spit on, we supreme. Somewhere I read a nigga had a dream. Did them dirty, they keep playing back that same to us, but it bullshit. If you win the battle, you can tell the story and delete whoever, get whoever glory. Hope you listen closely, this ain't metaphor. This is straight up real and I prepared you for it. MLK was a motherfucking agent. At first he ain't know it, cause really they played him. They showed him the front of the building, they tell him the back was burning. But the secret they gave him, he tried to reveal it. Go back and listen to that I Have a Dream and the speed that he gave on the night before they killed him. He climbed up that mountain and sink the promised land. That boy was a Mason. By writing, they sealed them documents forever. But I know Masons in Atlanta know better. They said he would kill cause of prejudice, yeah, but they lied to you. Here I come with that shovel on, yelling fuck black history. Ain't no black history. See, they gon' know about me. You gon' know about me. See, I am not a slave. I was born to slide. I am not afraid. Hop about that K. Oh yeah, free the guys. They went out of state. Yeah, I'm a child of God. I do not belong to the United States. Yeah, fuck black history. Tell Uncle Sam he can catch a fade. They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British, man. Quite frankly, you was kings Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them, and this shit get way deeper than your pigment. What if I told you was born sovereign and all you ever had to do was admit this shit? What if I told you that this was your ancestor land? That mean that they was the immigrants. Wait, I think that someone tried to explain that 100 years later. The Negro was still in exile in his own land. Natural birthright, Malcolm X style. What was Holmes saying? That's the curse, right? Fuck black history, ain't no black history. This ain't black history, this ain't that you'll see. They don't know about me, you don't know about me. They gon' know about me, you gon' know about me. See, I am not a slave, I was born to slide, I am not afraid. Hop about the K, oh yeah, free to God, they went out of state. I'm a child of God, I do not belong to the United States. Fuck black history, tell Uncle Sam he can catch a fade. I went to hell, school, graduated at the top of my class. Still never thought I was over my peers. We did that time together 12 years. Ain't that some movie? I think that it is. They won't control me, I'm really a member. I traveled that road, I came back with the jewels from.
Yep. Wild Indian, yeah.
Hey V, line them up.
I'm a wild Indian, you know I go crazy. Ain't really Indian, that boy fugazi. I just keep it player, you can never play me. You got an ass so fat, girl, let's make a baby. And another one. Then I'm back to the trap, I'm trying to double song. She a bad woke chick and I love her tongue. We some jurisdiction boys, we some 101s. Look, don't compare me to no Martin dog, I'm like Malcolm X. Die about our freedom, we'll leave a crack and stretch. Round of applause, boy, you know we clapping text. Chucky dog, child play, yeah, nigga, that's what's next. Open up the cans just like Arizona. Pull up mad stuff like we got the Rona. We set up jurisdictions when we buy the corner. How you claiming that's your hood and you not the owner? Be the B, I just pulled up in the need for speed. Free the land, tell the colonizers that they need to leave. Wild Indian up in my veins, you know how we bleed. You ain't gotta lie about who we is, dog, just keep it G. We at war, we can't keep the peace. Since we at war, gotta keep the peace. Whack a cone, then I meditate. Should I need to breathe? Keep an Olmec head when we slide, dog, cause we the shit.
Like my nigga said, bitch, we the shit. I can't keep the peace. If it
pop off, then I want a piece. I'm just on release. I'm in go mode, motherfucker thief. In these streets like EBT, when we at war, make peace with me. I don't give a damn, understand. Fuck who stole this land, white or black or tan. Understand, it's fuck who stole this land. Might have seen me get a little buddy these hands. He wasn't no apple man. Now these dudes is Sambo man. They full of shit like my ammo can. What they call an N-word out the wrong mouth as an ambulance. Wild Indian, get it in advance, or you can post date it. Ask around, I'm the most hated. Straight sacred, they stole acreage. Go ape shit, show ain't shit. It won't be televised, I don't tape shit.
Be the beat, I just pulled up in the need for speed. Free the land, tell the colonizers that they need to leave. Wild Indian up in my veins, you know how we bleed. You ain't gotta lie about who we is, dog, just keep it G. We at war, we can't keep the peace. Since we at war, gotta keep the peace. Whack a cone, then I meditate. Should I need to breathe? Keep a Olmec head when we slide, dog, cause we the sheep.
Hey, peace and love to all the Aboriginal, Indigenous, Indians. Peace and love, Grand Rising. It's good to be back for a little second, man. I had to, when I saw that clip, man, I had to come up here and, give my 2 cents on some things. So I hope y'all doing well. Peace and love to everybody in the chat. Peace and love to the people who will come in. Peace and love to everyone. I've missed you guys. As you all may or may not know, I've started my master's program. So, my time on YouTube will be limited due to that because it's a lot of work and I really have to focus and concentrate. But, this, as the title says, this warranted my attention to pop up on here and holler at the people and see how they feel about this, because this was really wild. And I was like, we already knew what time it was over here in these streets where we're talking about the slave trade narrative, where we're talking about no slave boats. And it seems like these people are doing everything they can to find proof of slave boats and slave trade history, but they still keep hitting roadblocks. And it's interesting that this particular clip I'm about to show came out 7 years ago, but yet they've still been pushing this narrative for the longest time, even after they found that that the wreck was not legitimate, that the ship that they found at Alabama was not a legitimate Clotilda slave boat. And it's very interesting too, because so many people that feel like they're descendants of this particular slave boat or whatever, their ancestors came off this boat, all of that stuff honestly is a bald-headed lie, because and this is what they do. They like to play on our emotions. They like to play on who we are. They want us to buy into this narrative so much that they'll go out of their way to make up lies and keep lies going. It's shout out to this is where we got to shout out the pioneers for breaking down doors and breaking down barriers, because it's like now everything is, becoming so clear now. So I'm going to start with this clip first. And then I'm going to show you guys more and more clips of how they continue to keep this narrative going. And, I also have a little slight article up as well. Do I have the article up? Let me pull it up so it can be ready for y'all. So I got some articles that I do want to go through and read a little bit of, and showing y'all how early on, even when I first started doing bills on YouTube or whatever, that the narrative behind the Barracoon, the narrative behind the Clotilda was all cap. And yeah, it is what it is. And now we about to prove it. So let's go. Now I want to hear what Payne Goofy's going to say now, because this is ridiculous. And it's sad that people didn't catch on to them still perpetuating the lie. And it just goes to show that they'll do whatever they can, family, to keep this narrative going, to keep it alive, to keep us in a perpetual state of victimhood. And it's no more. 3 days. Oh, my bad, y'all.
Too big to be Clotilda.
Let me start it over.
From historical documents also.
My fault, y'all.
After 3 days of examination, experts have several reasons proving this wasn't the Clotilda. First, the remains were too big to be the Clotilda. Information from historical documents also didn't match. We learned today that other shipwrecks were found, and the Alabama Historical Commission would like to examine those in the future. They also want to keep looking for the Clotilda, the last known ship to bring slaves to U.S. from Africa.
Just because this was not the Clotilda, it does not mean that the Clotilda is not out there somewhere. So we're going to go back to Montgomery, start strategizing on what the next step is to try to get funding.
I feel like there's still hope because I lived a long time, and me passing this history down to my children and my grandkids, they'll be able to know that their grandmama worked towards finding a solution to the real truth about the Clotilda.
Jones.
Y'all see how sad that is? That poor woman been sitting up here telling her grandkids about this. And whole time, it's been a whole lie. But we already knew this. Family. And it's really, really, really sick. And it's interesting that they're still trying to open up exhibits and do different things like that when they know that those remains were not the real deal Holyfield, okay? So this came out March 5th, 2018. Alabama wreck isn't the remains of slave ship Clotilda. A shipwreck off the coast of Alabama is not a famous slave ship after all. The Alabama Historical Commission says the ship is too new and too large to be the Clotilda, which was the last known vessel to bring enslaved people to the United States in 1860. Look at how they lie. Like, they literally said it was too large. So when we talk about the size of slave ships, that they're schooners, that they're, they didn't have that capacity to hold people at the bottom of it and then ship them across the ocean, the transatlantic ocean for 90 days. I mean, the Atlantic Ocean for 90 days. Like, this is... Boy, I know they sick to their stomach. Because there is no way that they and it's sad, like I told y'all, because they're continuing to perpetuate this lie. Too new. And I think when people think about slave ships, I think they think about those massive ships that they see in certain parts of time in history that don't apply to the 14, 15, 1600s. And dare even say the 1700s. It don't apply. And then y'all want to sit up here and lie to people? Got people believing that their ancestors came off this? Child, I'm telling you right now. So let's keep reading. This shit was too new and too large. I cannot deal. Look at him in the water doing nothing. What's left of the ship lies partially buried in mud alongside an island in the lower Mobile Tensar Delta, a few miles north of the city of Mobile. The hull is tipped to the port side, which means almost completely buried in mud. The entire length of the starboard side, however, is almost fully exposed. The wreck, which is normally underwater, was exposed during extreme low tides brought on by the same weather system that brought the bomb cyclone to the eastern seaboard. Low tide around Mobile was about 2.5 feet below normal, thanks to the winds that blew that day. As the two-way reported in January, before heading out to the site, Raines compiled months of research collecting information from historical records, articles, and notes from the captain's account of the trip. He interviewed locals with century-old ties to the region until he stumbled on one who told him he might know its location. So Raines set out to find it. It was old, it was burnt, it was right where the guy said, burnt it, and it was there. It was where the local old-timer says it was. Raines said he couldn't be sure it was the Clotilda, and the Historical Commission says its experts have ruled it out. The commission says, in part, Clotilda was 86 feet long, while the wreck the commission identifies as near 12 Mile Island is 158 feet and 5 inches long. The newly discovered ship originally had 3 masts, not 2, as on the Clotilda, and the size of the timbers also does not match. Perhaps most telling, the commission says that the remains don't seem to have fire damage, unlike the Clotilda. Clotilda was burned and then sank. There is no definitive evidence of burning on the 12 Mile Island wreck. The damage from small marine organisms that eat wood can look similar to fire damage. Our team excavated parts of the site to expose areas of the ship to examine the damage. Undamaged sections of the wreck shows the damage was confined to the waterline area only, whereas a fire would have damaged or destroyed the hull above the waterline. Lisa Jones, executive director of the commission, says in a statement that the story of the slave ship has a profound meaning in Alabama, and the attention paid to this wreck will inspire a renewed effort to find the Clotilda. Shout, it's the lies for me. Never found it. Sat up there and said that they found it. And then, like I said, now it's people who are dependent on this history, who believe that they descend from this history, and they wonder why we going off about slave boats, because they'll do anything to make it true. So let's keep going. They got a nerve to be opening up a daggone exhibit. Hold up, y'all. This video came out 2 years ago. So this was 2 years ago. And they still reporting it like it's actual factual. I'm telling you, that clip must have wasn't making big news or making big rounds for them to still be able to go about making exhibits. And still holding on to this last shipwreck lie. You heard us say that they were seeking funding. They don't care about a slave ship. And don't. Let's listen to this.
Town Bridge, where the 110 survivors of the last known slave ship got off were remembered. The event, called the
Look at this, y'all.
Was an opportunity to honor their ancestors.
How they still honoring them, and that wasn't the boat.
Educate future generations. Descendants were asked
Yeah,
to wear
they
white,
do.
and they say they'll never forget.
Forget.
We did a lamentation ceremony in honor of our ancestors.
Look at that.
And it's a prayer.
They say direct descendant. Child, I cannot do it. This man look every bit of indigenous too, and he out here with this kente hat on. You know what? I can't with our people, man. But it's not our people's fault, and that's what's sad about all of this, is that our people don't even see how they're being misled, and everything is the truth until it's not the truth.
We just want to make sure that memory is never forgotten.
I've known about the Clotilda for so many years, but for it to come to fruition and to have all of the descendants come together as one and actually see the site where our ancestors were led off at, is
I'm only showing this to you guys because I want y'all to see how engulfed our people be into this narrative that they don't even recall that particular clipping coming out, or they're not even questioning the legitimacy behind what it is that they claim to have found. They talk about 110 people, so they done. They done went, y'all. It's so frustrating to know that they went and concocted a whole lie like this. But we already know that they've been lying like this. But it's sad that our people, a lot of our people, it's like they love perpetual victimhood. I'm telling you.
such an amazing event.
Anyone near or far, whether you live here or come visit Africa Town, the museum that they erected here for the heritage of Africa Town is simply amazing. It's a must-see.
And we got a tour of that new museum. The new addition to the area is called Clotilda, the exhibition highlighting the stories of the 110 slaves brought to Mobile against their will. Fox 10's Anaya Spraggs has the story.
163 years ago, on July 8th, historians say the Clotilda, the last known U.S. slave ship, arrived in Mobile carrying 110 men, women, and children. When they arrived, they were separated and sold to slave dealers across the state, and the captain reportedly burned the ship to hide evidence of the crime. Those who survived created a community of their own, known as Africatown.
It's beautiful people here. We got good neighbors.
Saturday was the grand opening of Clotilda, the exhibition. The museum features the story of the Clotilda and its survivors.
To see this come to fruition, it's deeply humbling, but we really feel the urgency in telling these stories.
Inside the 2,500 square foot building, there are stories about the survivors' experiences on the ship, pieces of the 86-foot long vessel, news articles about the landing of the Clotilda, and more.
I got pieces of the vessel. When a clip of the damn thing just said that wasn't what pieces do you have?
Work for a nonprofit organization in the Biloxi Gulfport area that is striving to revitalize communities there, like East Biloxi, that also has a rich African American heritage, but the community has been neglected over the years.
These engines.
So trying to turn that around. So
they are clearly engines. Look at them. Look at him and look at her. Ain't no way.
I'm looking at this kind of like as an important lesson as to how we can do it over there.
Descendants of the survivors of the Clotilda, like Lori Stanbury and her family, were among those at the grand opening.
I think this is a wonderful occasion for us to come and actually celebrate the 163rd year of the anniversary of the landing.
All say they are very happy to see how the museum turned out.
It's so good to know your history, because if you don't know where you came from, how you know where you go?
Ain't that nothing but the truth, though? That ain't nothing but the truth. If you don't know your past, you ain't gonna know your future. And for them to continue to go around and fabricate the past of the so-called African Americans, it's really sick. And this is what we got our people around here all happy, joy about something that's not even the truth. I just want to play that clip one more time, because there is no way that this clip came out in 2018 and they are in 2022 creating museums around a false narrative.
3 days of examination, experts have several reasons proving this wasn't the Clotilda. First, the remains were too big to be the Clotilda. Information from historical documents also didn't match. We learned today that other shipwrecks were found, and the Alabama Historical Commission would like to examine those in the future. They also want to keep looking for the Clotilda, the last known ship to bring slaves to U.S. from Africa.
Just because this was not the Clotilda, it does not mean that the Clotilda is not out there somewhere. So we're going to go back to Montgomery, start strategizing on what the next step is to try to get funding.
I feel like there's still hope, because I lived a long time, and me passing this history down to my children and my grandkids, they'll be able to know that their grandmama worked towards finding a solution to the real truth about the Clotilda.
Jones says she would like to complete a survey on what's in the middle of the channel, buried deep below the mud. Reporting live in the newsroom, Elizabeth Rodo, Fox 10 News.
Child, that is absolutely ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. And look, they got a whole special on it too. They done went and did a special on the Clotilda. After this came out, I've been trying to figure out how the hell do we get to this point where we'll ignore complete. They said, experts said the shit ain't adding up. And it's not. And it's not. I have to rebalance myself every time. Listening to my fellow Negroes makes my body hurt extremely. Visceral forehead hurting. I just don't even talk to any of them. Girl, I feel you. I feel you. First of all, peace to the chat, y'all. Hey, Country Ray. Hey, Ghetto Child Clinic. Focus Mind. Tahanga Akartika, everybody. What's up, Suzanne? Most hated flat power. What's up, baby? Bad Saint. Ex St. Louis. Hey, y'all. Peace and love. Because seriously, then they wonder why we have so much contention with the slave boats. I'm sitting up here having, like, literally talking to my folks from the DMV, trying to get them to see how much the Clotilda is a lie, how much the slave boat narrative is a lie. And, like, I put that video in the group chat. You know, they ain't say nothing about it. Y'all want to sit up there and fight me? And these people playing in your face. Like, they are fighting me. Meantime, y'all getting played with. Hold up. And I'm going to show y'all what I mean. Because this was outrageous. Like, you guys sit up here and keep talking to your people because you're trying to help them, you know what I'm saying? And you want them to see, you know what I'm saying? You want them to be able to have a better understanding. And a lot of times, man, people just don't care to understand. They much rather be right where they at. They rather be right where they at. Give me 1 second, y'all, because I gotta find it. Yeah, I think this the video right here. Yeah, because this the type of stuff. He's sitting over there. Look at this, y'all. And then I'm gonna go back to these videos, man, because this was ridiculous. And like, I hate to keep putting Floyd on blast every time, but it's really annoying.
Dogs of the people that was coming on the estimate, all of that's correct. Thieves and throwaways, you're right. So they came over here, right? So all of that's correct, right? Problem is, to your point, about 2 million people per year died on those boats, right? Estimated, right? And they based that off the logs of the people that was coming on the boats in Africa, right? Because this is cargo, right? You sold drugs before, you know, well, I don't know if you did, I did. I knew how much dope I had in the bags, right? I might got 15 in this bag, 15 in that bag, right? So if I get to DC and it's 2 bags, it's not 2 in here, hold on, I know where I got, right? So the numbers is off. And so it wasn't that they was keeping documentation 400 years ago so they can lie to black people one day.
And that's the misconception right there. If you think for 1 second that these folks ain't got a reason to lie to us, man, we already behind the 8 ball. Already. I'm trying to really pull up get to what he said about the Clotilda.
When they was free, they was keeping documentation because we was 3/5 of a human being. We was cattle. We was property to them. Hold on.
And I wish I could explain 3/5 of what the 3/5 compromise really was, because he didn't even know what that really was. And it's like our people, you know, and as much as I love us, man, but we be in straight up denial. Straight up.
I just let you do your thing. So when we talking about the wreckage and all of this stuff, it wasn't preserved because, and by the way, they wouldn't have the boats and stuff like that somewhere highlighted because this was an industry that they lost in.
So
this was a $1 billion industry that they had to sacrifice because they lost. So they wouldn't be celebrating those ships. And by the way, which one of us would let that ship sit there?
But you just
nobody will let that ship just sit there. Huh?
You just contradicted yourself.
Life of contradiction. No. Tell me how.
Look, life of contradiction. Tell me how. Y'all, I must have went up too soon about the clothes when he commented on the Clotilda. I must have, because I want to figure out where he was talking about the Clotilda, because I'm trying to stay on topic.
Travel from places to come here to get it better.
To America with Mansa Musa.
Okay, yeah, he always
history on this to cover up their type of history that they don't want to expose, and that's the truth. So yeah, I think the slave boat thing, that shit's they got every last statue you could think of up in this country, but they don't have not one slave boat. The Clotilda they talking about this in 2020, but all they shown y'all was like wreckage of wood. Like, come on now, who said that that's a ship down there? They just
landed. That was a ship down there. Let's go. Because what in the world was happening here, y'all? And it just goes to show. I just want y'all to understand and see how passionate our people are about this narrative. And we really got a lot of unlearning to do. And that's why we have to be patient with each other. I think that when we get on these panels and sometimes we have these conversations, you know, it's like nothing is truly predicated predicated in proof. It's like we like to believe lies. And once we hear something that contradicts what we've heard, what we know to be true for a long period of time, we literally can't take it. We can't take it. We can't adjust. We can't say, all right, well, let me go do my research on this and figure out what's really true and what's really plausible. And it's really, really weird. Yeah, because I want y'all to hear what he said about the Clotilda.
Anything because they want to connect this because they know a lot of us are finding out the truth about our lineage and our heritage, and that it's not 100% this slave trade story that they're predicating on us. So that's just, you know, I could really talk about this all day because I really go into this. I actually do the research, like from the people who actually built the slave trade voyage website and all of this stuff. They don't even talk about the slave trade that happened within the United States. They don't talk about people being shipped from Virginia to Tennessee, from South Carolina to Virginia. They don't talk about none of that. But all of that is very true. So y'all, you know, it just takes a lot of discernment to really unpack it and truly understand it. I just think it takes time for people to come into it on their own. And that's just what it is, y'all. Hell no. We are the boat story.
Okay. So a couple things I just want to rebut, right? If I will, if you can.
I think he started right.
You're right. To think that our story starts at slavery would be wrong. Slavery, the Middle Passage in America, right, started somewhere around 1525, right? And so if we're to look at the Africans that left West Africa to come to America with Mansa Musa, that was around 1357, right? So about 200 years before slavery would have started here. So to Boone point, the Africans that were already in America would have been here for about roughly 100 years, right, with the so-called Indians, right, in America already before the Europeans left England, right? Like you said, they were slaves and throwaways. You're right. So they came over here, right? So all of that's correct.
Maybe he was speaking about the Clotilda before I came in there. Hold up. Well, maybe he was. Hold up, y'all.
Every other culture knows exactly where
you're not going to lose.
They come from, and I think
I don't know.
Give us credit for. I think for sure, there are things that have been set in place. Yeah, we could have said we wouldn't integrate. I think we're doing much better, right? Our own country of African American civilization. So we said something like years, right? We only been free 125 years, something like that, right? In this country, right? And so we seeing upward mobility that no other group of people in civilization have ever had, right? We don't have like our own country of African America, right? It's just we're 12% in the place that we would call our home. We're 12% of the population, if that, right? Right? This is 12%. So I think we're doing much better than most people give us credit for. I think for sure, there are things that have been set in place. Yeah, we could have said we wouldn't integrate. Maybe you heard about all these different places where Black people was setting up their own communities and they bombed them and burnt them and killed them and hung them by their nuts and drug them by their neck on the back of cars. Like, I don't know if y'all just thought that, oh man, them Black people doing real good over there. Let's let them be. That wasn't the reality. So a lot of these people was hungry to death.
Not to cut you off, brother. Those are years after. So before we go to Boone, I want to just make sure the people can understand what side they feel like you identify. You feel like you and your heritage and your family was already here, or you feel like y'all came over on the boat.
But this what I'm trying to tell you. Like when we talking about Mansa Musa and them left West Africa years before we talking about the slave trade, right? So of course, you got Africans that was in America before the slave trade. That's a fact. That ain't no secret. This where you get all the Mexicans and all this. This is where you get all this shit from.
What you got, Boom?
See, he didn't answer it. He didn't answer it properly. It was my bad, y'all, because it was somewhere in here where he was making a comment about the Clotilda, but I'm gonna just keep it moving. But y'all get the point. That's just an example of how our people, how we just cling on to stuff and we don't get the proper evidence behind it. So look, this came out, this was like 6 years ago right here, this particular news.
Yes, it is Clotilda.
He's sitting up there lying. Yes, it is Clotilda.
The official announcement of the discovery of the last known slave ship to enter America.
Much that we think is lost is not really lost.
Yeah, that's
and it's there, and it's in your own backyard.
News of the discovery came to Africatown just a few weeks ago. After years of searching, archaeologists say the Clotilda was found in an undredged part of the Mobile River on the east side of 12 Mile Island, among 14 separate shipwrecks. They say after the process of elimination and a whole lot of research, they
process of elimination
could determine it.
Really, this is an exceptional story, so it needed some exceptional science behind it, and that's the key to everything.
While it's unlikely that the ship will be raised, archaeologists say we should see some parts of it soon.
Need not be something big and magnificent. It can be small, and it can bear the scars of a burning, such as these fragments do, and yet tell us something.
So today was its celebration, yet in all the excitement, there's a dark and sinister story that lies behind the ship. 110 teenagers and young adults were kidnapped from Benin, Africa, and brought to the United States illegally.
It happened. It really happened. It was really real. It was really real.
I'm sorry. Woo, child. This is a mess, honey. It happened. It really happened. Who are you trying to convince? Us or you?
It really happened. It was really real. It was really real for those folks to have spent 2 months on a boat. 2 months on a boat and got here. They persevered.
Some of their direct descendants still live in the place the 110 settled once slavery was abolished in America. We now know it as Africatown, USA.
I just took myself back to that day, thinking about my ancestors on that boat, listening to the waves, listening to the waters, the screams. It just gave me chills because I immediately imagined myself being on that boat.
The commemoration moved outside where descendants led rituals and prayed.
Oh my God, bro. This is awful. This is awful. So they literally come out and say, hey, this wreckage is not the Clotilda. This is it. That's what I'm saying. So when they found this, did they just make up a story behind it? Because it's crazy work. And I ain't gonna even say that's the complete truth, because we know that it says, this is an article right here that I shared on my channel early on, okay? And y'all already know we got to come with receipts, because people always want to swear, you know, somebody trying to deny African ancestors, and it ain't about denial, it's about the truth. And the truth is, y'all not African, and y'all have to get over this. Borders and Portrayal and Zora Neale Hurston's Barracoon, Rethinking Truths and Facts in the American Slave Narrative. Dude, this is from somebody that goes to the University of Bergen in Norway. They even see the damn tea. They even clock it, y'all tea, that this narrative is cap, and y'all are not factual at all in your tellings or anything. See, they got upset with me on Threads, y'all. Y'all know what Threads is, right? On Instagram. And, you know, somebody had wrote all this lovely stuff about Zora Neale Hurston. I said, yeah, don't forget she plagiarized. Oh, you need to watch it. She only plagiarized once. Oh, okay. But if that was somebody else plagiarizing, then y'all be up their tail about it. Like, cut the jokes. Hold up, y'all. I want to see if I could, maybe I could open it with Google Docs or something. because I want y'all to be able to see. Can y'all see that? I might need to make it. Let me see. All right. It didn't even change. Oh, that's because I got to go over there. Hold up, y'all. But can y'all see that? Or is that too small? Because enough is enough. Like, I'm sorry, y'all. It's just funny to me. Because our people have literally been told a whole lie. A whole lie. And that's why I said to all y'all that was coming to me about the Clotilda, get out my face. It says, due to skepticism about authenticity, facts became a central trope in the American slave narrative genre. Authors bolstered their credibility by emphasizing factual details about the barbarity of enslavement on Southern plantations, based on interviews conducted with Cujo Lewis, believed to be the last known surviving African slave in America. The last known surviving African slave in America. Zora Neale Hurston's posthumously published Barracoon expands the slaves' narratives, bordered by unpacking ramifications of transnational betrayal. Lewis's harrowing memory of the African corporates who captured and sold him to white slave traders complicates the slave narrative's adherence to facts. Although the transatlantic slave trade, created and operated by Europeans and Americans, was a greater evil than slave trading practices carried out by Africans, Lewis's betrayal by his own African neighbors reveals an existential trauma often ignored by the facts of slave narratives. Barracoon is Hurston as her most subversive, choosing to explore the unresolved complications of a truthful, lived experience instead of clarifying comfort of contained facts. So, Zora Neale Hurston's posthumously published Barracoon represents a momentous rethinking of hegemonic narratives. The immersive anthropological text uses literary approach to boldly upend the conventions of the American slave narrative genre. They're calling it a genre, honey. Aw, damn it. Okay, my fault, y'all. Instead of using prior slave narrative templates to document the enslaved's odyssey and journey from slavery in the South to freedom in the North, or to examine how the enslaved individual strikes to live a life of honor and dignity within a contained Southern milieu, Hurston chooses to expand the physical and psychological borders of the slave narrative by exploring how the fullness of the enslaved's pre-captivity experience complicates Africa's role in the transatlantic slave trade and the promise of post-emancipation America. So they're saying that ultimately she's choosing to go inside the physical and the psychological mindset of the narrative by ultimately, trying to interview this man and put her own little twist on things. Before unpacking the nature of and implications of Barracoon's subversive take on the genre, it is imperative to mention that Hurston is an artist with subversive inclinations. In the late 1930s, while Black writers were moving away from the hopeful tone of the Harlem Renaissance and delving into the aesthetic of protest fiction, an unflinching look at race relations in the United States, Hurston published her seminal novel, Their Eyes Were Watching God, an epic love story about an African-American woman's quest for self-fulfillment on her own terms. Although Black male writers like Richard Wright and Alan Locke lambasted Their Eyes Were Watching God for being too pastoral and unacceptably apolitical, Hurston resisted the hegemonic pressure to conform to the protest fiction aesthetic. She was, as a result, ostracized by literary elites and fell seriously out of the step with the times. Her work went without a print and she died almost penniless in Florida. So she was getting ridiculed for her work. Her work was not accepted, and she was just pretty much ostracized, and she didn't have any money when she died. That's just that in a nutshell. Okay. It says Hurston's artistic subversiveness, I argue, peaks in the posthumously published Barracoon, the story of the last black cargo, 2018. So posthumously means that it was published after she died. Not only does the text and its arduous journey to the publication eerily echo the tensions of Hurston's career, it completely dismantles established conventions of the American slave narrative genre and sheds light on the transnational traumas of enslaved Africans in the Americas. Barracoon is a narrative about Cujo Lewis, the last known surviving African of the last American slaver, the Clotilda. The Clotilda, arguably, the last United States slave ship to traffic in slaves from Africa, carried out its expedition about 50 years after the U.S. had already outlawed the transatlantic slave trade. Despite the official, quote, ban in 1808, American slavers continued to traffic in Africans, albeit at a decreased volume due to patrols, until the Clotilda's final voyage in 1860. Lewis was a teenager when he was sold to an American slaver and brought to the Plateau Magazine Point, Alabama in 1806, where he was held as a slave for approximately 5 years until Union soldiers told him he was free. Unlike most African slaves at the time who were already settled in the U.S. for generations, Lewis still had vivid memories of his African home. Thus, according to his testimony, he struggled for the remaining of his life to find sense of belonging or community in the U.S. Hurston first met and interviewed Lewis, Ne Aluele Kosola, in July 1927. Dr. Franz Boas, often dubbed the father of American anthropology, enlisted Hurston, his mentee. So now we can kind of see here how it's getting into a false narrative when we see people like Franz Boas pop up. Now, this is the person that they're claiming to be the father of anthropology, the person who was comparing, didn't really do much anthropological work, obviously, but just studied a couple of people, studied people in Africa, studied the black people in Africa, studied the black people in America, and just came up with this whole shebang, right? Just, putting it in a nutshell. And we all know who he is, chat. So, yeah. So he enlisted Hurston, his mentee, to get a first-hand report of the raid that had brought him to America and bondage. The Journal of Negro History published Hurston's interview as Cujo's own story of the last American slaver. But years later, long after Hurston's death, the article was outed as a plagiarized document by a Hurston biographer, Robert Hemingway. Most of the article was secondhand information lifted from the Historic Sketches of the South, a historical text by Alabama farmer and writer Emma Langdon Roche, which examines the history of American slavery, including the story of the Clotilda and the fate of the African slaves it ferried. Lies, 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 lies. Child, I am tired of the lies, honey. And the girl's been lying. The girl's been lying, okay? And thank you, Bad Saint. Thank you. Yeah, we need to pull some liquor out for that. Rest in peace to African American, because y'all tried it. Yep, exactly. If he was the last African, how the hell we are Africans if he was the last one? Yep. That's what I'm saying. We got to look at these things and we have to observe it because it's so sick. So they started all of this by a plagiarized story, just like Roots, just like any other story that they've given us and they've plagiarized and lied about. It's just like I don't got no choice but to laugh because it's so sad that all you can do is laugh. I don't know. I'm just one of those people. I'll laugh in the midst like of stuff like this because it's crazy. It's crazy. And I know I went over this article a long time ago, probably about a year ago though. Like when I first used to come on YouTube and all I was giving out was articles. And I had to go back and pull this out. Because they found out that the shipwreck wasn't the Clotilda. And they knew that. And instead of being honest, we just gotta play this one more time. And then we could come on back to the reading. Because we're going to get into more about how she was lying about this narrative, how she plagiarized the document, and then they outed her. And then you got the nerve to be being a mentee under France Boas, France the fraud, honey. No, baby. Let me show this one more time for the people who just coming into the chat. Because I'm not going to be long today. I'm not going to be long today. I just wanted to come over here, put this out here. That's why I put that it was founded not to be the Clotilda over 7 years ago. Because when this clip started surfacing yesterday or the day before, whatever day it was, it started surfacing. I was like, well, let me go find the actual clip. And this has been up there for 7 years, y'all. And even after this has been published, how are they still making, how do you got a whole museum on a false story? And this is why people can't be mad at Trump for trying to restore truth to history. People, he shouldn't be doing this and doing that. A lot of this history is not the truth. And something got to be done about that. And it got y'all believing, not y'all in the chat, but it got our people believing. We can't even talk to them about this because they're so engulfed into this story that's not even real. This is not a real story. You people want to keep on trying to play with us. And the ones who do know, we're being looked at like we're crazy, like we don't know what we're talking about. We just want to deny this and deny that. Tell your government to stop lying then. One more time for those who didn't see this yet.
After 3 days of examination, experts have several reasons proving this wasn't the Clotilda. First, the remains were too big to be the Clotilda. Information from historical documents also didn't match. We learned today that other shipwrecks were found, and the Alabama Historical Commission would like to examine those in the future. They also want to keep looking for the Clotilda, the last known ship to bring slaves to U.S. from Africa.
Just because this was not the Clotilda does not mean that the Clotilda is not out there somewhere. So we're going to go back to Montgomery, start strategizing on what the next step is to try to get funding.
I feel like there's still hope because I lived a long time, and me passing this history down to my children and my grandkids, they'll be able to know that their grandmama worked towards finding a solution to the real truth about the Clotilda.
Jones says she would like to complete a survey on what's in the middle of the channel, buried deep below the mud. Reporting live in the newsroom.
And I feel bad for that poor lady. She sounded like she wanted to cry, okay? Wanted to cry, honey. She'd have told her kids and her grandkids this. And they swear they some type of descendants. Child, I don't want to hear it. And do y'all know, I know y'all remember that last live I had did a couple weeks ago with the Sites Room. And they are so lucky I had work to do the week before last. Because this whole story around, the whole talk around the people being Harriet Tubman descendants was coming up too. And I guess that they ended up bringing her on, but I mean, I guess he's gonna publish that episode soon. And when he publish it, I'm gonna show it here. But apparently, I mean, I kept saying, so is she a descendant of the alleged brothers and sisters? Because it's historically documented that Harriet Tubman don't have no children. So how are y'all her descendants? Are y'all are not her descendants? She like y'all auntie or something, or like she's not a grandmother of y'all's. So you know what I'm saying? Like, hey, I'm not gonna even get into that. That's more of Dane Calloway kind of talk in terms of the debunking of Harriet Tubman and all that, which he did a good job with. But usually I don't speak on it because I just don't speak on it, like I said. So I would have cussed the Caucasian chick out like, girl, if you don't mind your motherfucking business. She knows damn well people didn't tell her she was African. Ain't never seen a bunch of people who want to be slaves so bad. I'm telling you, it's supposed to have been a small boat, not a big boat. They try to lie and say it's big. Yep, and I just read that. I'll pull that article back up for you, Akamac. You must have just pulled in because I read that article in the beginning that they said that this ship that they found that they were trying to allege to be the Clotilda was way too big. And we've shown examples of what the slave ships apparently look like, the schooners and all of that. They were not these massive ships that I think people really believe in their head somewhere that these were these massive ships. No, they were schooners, people. Nobody was getting pulled up on no deck for air or none of that. They going to find out their grandma was lied to, and now the truth must come out. Oh, no, I seen it. I'm at work. Oh, okay. True. I hope everybody's having a good day at work and all those things. Because, like, when I get off of here, y'all, I got to do some reading of my own. I have several Zoom calls this evening. Oh, my God. So many. I have, like, 4 today. Back to back. And that shit is really annoying. But I have to do what I have to do, family. So y'all wish me luck on this master's journey because it's coming. It is coming, honey. And I should be done with this by May. So I'm very excited. I'm very excited. You know, I'm just excited about getting my skills up, learning more, opening my mind, you know. And a lot of us gonna need some therapy. A lot of our people gonna need some therapy after these truths keep coming out, man. After these truths keep coming out, our people go, hey, I'll do some therapy with you. I'll help you on out. You know what I'm saying? You can come book a private session with me. And I got you, okay? I'll help you get through the slave narrative lie. I will help you get through it, honey. Hey, Drake Hobbs, peace. Hey, OTK, Big Dog, Philly OG, the family in here today. Yes, the American Warrior, peace to you. I'm sorry I didn't get a chance to shout out everybody. The family in here today. Peace, y'all. So let's keep rolling with this article here. So, like I said, let's go back to this. So, just a little quick recap. So, Zora Neale Hurston is like the progenitor of all things, the American slaver, the Clotilda narrative. All of this is thanks in part to her. And they can really go back and try to depend on what she said in her writings and what she said in the Journal of Negro History, what was published. They can go back and say, well, this story must be true because, you know, it's documented here. Someone said it was a story. They said they interviewed the person and they talked to the person, but whole time we know. So let's just read this again. I'm gonna just read up at the top. And then I'm going to just keep going. And we're going to keep, you know, and I'm going to keep trying to break it down because people like to say that we like to make up stuff. We don't have documents to back it up. It's plenty of scholars out here who was already calling out the bullshit. And people, school students, whoever, people was calling it out. We was calling it out. We been was calling it out. Our pioneers were of this movement. They were calling it out. And I love to see now that it's getting such a huge ring. Man, this narrative is dead. African American is dead. The indigenous paradigm for the Black Americans is ringing. And it's ringing hard in these streets. And they upset. But this is what has to happen. It has to happen this way. It has to start to uncover itself and unfold so that we can continue to get back into the fold of what's true and what's real and make them separate the fake from the real. Okay? Because the Native Americans out here capping, everybody out here capping. And it's wrong. And it's wrong. And the people that it does belong to is not getting the credit that it deserves. Instead, they're being placed in a slave narrative. And it's outrageous. Hold on, let me email this to myself real quick. Because it was something I had saw. It's probably deep down. But I'll find that in a minute. Like I always forget to email stuff to myself. So anyway, y'all, let's go. Hurston first met and interviewed Louis Neale Casola in July 1927. So she met this man in 1927. The Clotilda supposedly landed during what? They said 1860. So she met him. He was 67 years old when she met this man, apparently. Well, he was a teenager when he first was dropped off. So he probably was a lot older. So, anywho, this is all alleged. Dr. Franz Boas, often dubbed the father of American anthropology, enlisted Hurston, his mentee, to get a first-hand report of the raid that had brought him into America and bondage. The Journal of Negro History published Hurston's interview as Cujo's own story of the last American slaver. But years later, long after Hurston's death, the article was outed as a plagiarized document by a Hurston biographer, Robert Hemingway. Most of the article was secondhand information lifted from Historic Sketches of the South, 1914, a historical text by Alabama farmer and writer Emma Langdon Roche, which examines the history of American slavery, including the story of Clotilda and the fate of the African slaves it ferried. Scholars have speculated on the reasons why Hurston, usually the consummate professional, resorted to plagiarism. She was, for example, disgruntled with the methodological processes of her employers, process that had her chasing court records instead of doing immersive field work. So she was mad and irritated by the people she was employed by because instead of her being out there in the field doing real investigative work, she just chasing court records and documents. So she's irritated. So she mad. And so that gives her a right to go and plagiarize something because you was looking for validation from these peoples. She was also overworked and underpaid for the assignment. And perhaps she submitted an inauthentic document as a form of revenge. But see, that's sick. That's sick if that's what she did. That's sick if that's what she did. That is sick if that's what she did. Seriously. You're going to submit a fraudulent document because you wanted revenge on who, honey? See, and this is why I can't respect stuff like this. You know, you make people look bad. You make us look bad. Our people believe that this message is true. And despite it being outed as a plagiarized situation, people still believe it's true. I'm guessing they maybe go back and read the work of Emma Langdon Roche or something like that. Maybe they go back and read that and try to validate it somehow. But child, lies is lies. Other scholars like Lyndon Marion Hill have pointed to Hurston's inexperience at the time. In July 1927, she was not yet a tested social scientist and an accomplished novelist. She was perhaps overwhelmed by a daunting task of depicting Lewis's story in a manner that transcended the stale methodological processes she detested. And according to literary scholar Linda Hill, Hurston possibly became too uncertain how to manage her subjective response. Accusations of plagiarism cannot burden the literary and anthropological genius of Barracoon. Shit. Why can't it? When Hurston went back to see Lewis in 1927 of December, she was interested in telling an original story, infusing literary devices like suspense and irony into the anthropological perspectives she had acquired since their last meeting. Hurston and Barracoon is more secure in her talents and makes an effort to properly cite the passages she borrows from Roche's historical sketches of the South. Additionally, external sources corroborate the new information she presents in the text. According to literary scholar Deborah G. Plant, witness experts in Yoruba cultures, contemporary newspaper articles, and abundant archival material corroborate the various events in Cujo's life as described in the Barracoon. Child, I need to see these external sources. Due to the displaced identities created by the transatlantic slave trade and the mainstreaming of dehumanizing depictions of the Black experience in Western scholarship, Hurston believed that the ubiquitous objective observer format in anthropological practice was not applicable when studying African American culture. Objective observer format. And what did I say about Franz Boas and what he often did? Observe the bitch. I mean people, excuse me, y'all. Observe people. He wasn't talking to anyone or doing anything that would validate these so-called findings. Right? So, and they love to say that identities were displaced and the displaced identities created. So it says, due to the displaced identities created by the transatlantic slave trade. But whose identities was really displaced? Because a lot of us are going very far back in this country. And it's not going back to the boats that they said that our ancestors came off, which to me would never make any sense, because it's kind of like they got documentation for everything else. But you mean to tell me they ain't document no slaves that came off a boat? No names, no ages, no nothing. No descriptions, no nothing, right? But we're supposed to believe and have good faith that we're being told the truth about who we are. Lies. Lies. And we can't allow them to do it. We can't allow them to do it. I'm over it. I'm over it. Go ahead, Holy Zoli Toady. 305 Wood Chief. Hi, Mama Chief. Peace, sweetie. Bitch was the right word to use. Because seriously, this is what we have to deal with. And it's sick. But we know now. And it's up to us to continue to talk to our people, to continue to do research, to continue to gain understanding, because this is what hurts the most, is knowing that all of these years of your life, K through 12 academia. See, and let's talk about college, because for real, when you go, and it's sad too, because when you're speaking about HBCU in particular, and when we're talking about undergrad education, a lot of what you was taught in high school is not really being regurgitated in college history. And that's my opinion based off my experience, that they're barely teaching about the so-called Black experience in an HBCU. And that's really pathetic. I went to DSU for 1 year. Shout out to Delaware State. I went there for a year, y'all. And I'll never forget when they was giving us a tour of the campus. And they took us into, like, they claimed that the campus at Delaware State University was perhaps one of the areas and landmarks to where allegedly runaway slaves was coming through those parts up there in Delaware, you know, trying to run and get to freedom, etc., etc. They had the nerve to show some damn chains in a little dungeon, y'all. In like some little area, they had chains on the floor and all this weird work. And even then, like, I wasn't buying it. I just, child, you couldn't sell me no motherfucking wolf tickets, okay? And that's pretty much what it was giving. It was just giving, keep a narrative alive. We could put a couple of chains, and people act like these chains came from slavery. Them chains could have came from a chain gang. or something else, or from the 40s or the 30s or something, but not, who's to say that these chains is what our people was put on? Y'all say anything, and we believe anything. And I think that that's what's so disgusting about this, is that it's been a tale. It's been something that's untrue. And even if the more and more proof that's put in people's face, the less they want to believe it. And I think it's really diabolical. It's really diabolical. Shout out to everybody watching. But it's really diabolical, and I am tired of it. Like, we go through this too much, and we accept anything, and we don't allow ourselves the energy and the proof to get it for ourselves. And we don't want to learn. We don't want to talk to our folks. Our grandmothers is liars. All of this nonsense. For what? To be a slave? Miss me with it. Come on now. I don't got time for it. I'm tired. All right, so let's keep going. So it says, due to the displaced identities created by the transatlantic slave trade and the mainstreaming of mainstreaming of dehumanizing depictions of the Black experience in Western scholarship. Mainstreaming. That is so key. They want to mainstream. They want to dehumanize you in history, in public, and they don't care. And even if it's not true, see that news clip, it came out and it's been out there. And how no one caught this is what's really shameful. Because we got people who will say, yeah, the Clotilda, blah, blah, blah. No, the Clotilda ain't real. That's make-believe. Just like your ancestors coming off the boat. And that's why I always have to explain to people, listen, your people that you think came off the slave boat don't got nothing to do with slavery already occurring in the United States. That don't got nothing to do with it. Nothing. And they miss it. I said, because if you think for 1 second that our people wasn't here, I could pull up documents now of my people being born free in this land. How were they born free in this land? Make it make sense. Born free. Period. And that's why it's so important. Like, I keep wanting to emphasize that, man, because my mother's side of the family has such a rich history. It's so beautiful. And I'm still digging down with my father's side and getting a lot of things established on his side of the family too, about my great-grandmother Ollie and just a lot of the other people in my family on that side from South Carolina. But we're really trying to understand the truth. And the only way that we can do that is if we encompass our family stories and what our families understand about the history of the lines and from generations. You know, sometimes I find it hard to talk to family, y'all, because they don't like to answer the tough questions. And sometimes it is hard because some people don't want to relive certain things. They don't want to think about certain things. Like my grandmother and them literally grew up in a whole outhouse that my great-grandfather built with his bare hands. My mother lived there. My grandmother had 3 kids, and they was living there on top of everybody else who was living in that outhouse. And even before that, and when I say outhouse, y'all, I'm talking about like a bucket for the bathroom type of thing. I don't know what was going on with the water, and don't get me started, okay? But this is real life. And maybe like 2 doors down, right? My great-grandmother, who's 101, she lives like literally like 2 paces down. And that's how she ended up, that's how my grandmother ended up getting with her son and all. That's just basically what that was, right? But she still lives there to this day. And you can tell it's an old house too, but it's still a nice house that's been kept up for 100 years. which is really amazing. But the point is that we'll believe what the news say. We'll believe what Kamala Harris say, or Obama, all these stupid people, but we won't take the time to diligently go out here and do the research on our family history. And I implore everybody to keep digging. It takes years to do this. You're not gonna find it in no one time that you start searching. You gotta keep searching. You gotta match names, match date of births. You gotta make sure all the documents line up. You know, it's a lot. You gotta get names off of other birth certificates, and because I would say that for the most part, our people is well documented in this. We are well documented. Well documented. And it's just like, it's enough is enough. Enough is enough. Yes. Shout out to everybody in the chat. 111 True Searcher. Hey, boo. Hey, Saf. Girl, yeah. Maybe we could do a double header with that one the next time. When you got some time, hit my phone up, Saf. And we could probably, you know, get a little build together and get to going on how that Equiano story is fake. Because all this stuff fake. It's a bunch of lies. It's a whole bunch of lies. And we're tired. But we really do need to push looking for those family records. Like I was telling OTK, most of my folks is buried down there in Virginia. Not even all the way down there, right? Because where they are from is like an hour from DC, Loudoun County, Fauquier County. So that's where they are from, majority of them. Some of them from Culpeper, different places throughout like the Northern Virginia part. And a lot of them are buried in one particular cemetery called Gleedsville. Most of them are buried there. Like when I look at most of the documents, a lot of my people is buried in this one particular situation. So there's so much more research to do. There's so many more things to uncover. It's like I want to show y'all more stuff. But like I said, people on here, they take advantage of people trying to be genuine and authentic and show their family history and show who their people is. And, you know, a lot of people like to try to make a mockery and a fool out of you. So it's like, you got to be careful. But at the same time, the truth going to always be the truth, and it's always going to reign supreme. It's always going to ring out. And it's no different with this Clotilda situation. So anyway, let's keep going. It says, Hurston believed that the ubiquitous objective observer format in anthropological practices was not applicable when studying African American culture. Objectivity, she maintained, has been forever jeopardized. Thus, profiling a subject with the story as compelling as Kosala's would be nearly impossible without immersion into the community itself. Barracoon sees Thurston moving away from the hegemonic anthropological methodologies of her time and actualizing her vision of herself as a social scientist and an artist who was determined to present Kosala's story in as authentic a manner as possible. I guess that's the foreword. After completing Barracoon in 1931, Hurston struggled to secure a publisher. Viking Press showed interest, but only agreed to publish the book if Hurston rewrote it in language rather than dialect. Hurston refused. The art of precise transcription, a talent she learned from her mentor Boaz, was crucial. She believed to authentically telling Lewis's story. Because Lewis was never formally educated in the U.S., the so-called imperfections of his syntax and his cadence are integral to understanding the richness of his story. Now let's talk about that. Let's talk about the imperfections of his syntax and cadence. So if we're talking about a bunch of people that they claim descended from slaves from Africa, why is that syntax and cadence still not intact in some way? Because there's no way you're going to tell me that a bunch of people came off a boat, came to America, and they just beat the shit out of them until they spoke clearly. or spoke in an English dialect, or spoke in a tone that was good enough for these people, you don't lose your heritage and culture because somebody bring you to a new land. That's not how that works. That's not how that works. Even if people was speaking in this dialect, don't you think there's no way that it would just go away? You think people was that pressed to assimilate? Because we had our own spaces. So you're not about to tell me that you still would not have the same linguistic sentiments. I think it's outrageous. As a Southern writer who works often celebrate the cultural vibrancy of Southern traditions, Hurston had an appreciation for the linguistic richness of the Black Southern experience, thus rewriting, or what others call refining, Lewis's words would have betrayed her artistic values. Barracoon was not able to secure a publisher during Hurston's lifetime, and she died forgotten, penniless, feeling silenced and betrayed by the gatekeepers of Black art. About a decade after Hurston's death, Alice Walker, then a young writer, became acquainted with and inspired by Hurston's work, and in 1973, she discovered Hurston's unmarked grave. The significant moment marked the beginning of Hurston's triumphant resurrection. Walker proceeded to pen her essay In Search of Zora Neale Hurston, which sparked interest in Hurston's work and developed a seemingly unstoppable momentum in Hurston-related scholarship. Hurston's biographer, Robert Hemingway, also contributed to raising her literary profile, and she quickly became the subject of conferences and doctoral dissertations, and the movie rights to Their Eyes Were Watching God, which has sold more than 1 million copies since 1990, have been bought by Oprah Winfrey and Quincy Jones. Look at Oprah trying to profit. Despite Hurston's triumphant revival, Barracoon still lay languishing in an archive at Howard University. Undeterred by multiple failed attempts at securing a publisher, the Zora Neale Hurston Trust made another plea in 2016. In a statement released to Time magazine by trustee Lois Gatson, the trust argued that Barracoon seemed especially timeless for release now, given that our country is continuing to focus on our racial divide and the consequences of slavery. The case for Barracoon's publication became even louder. Excuse me, y'all. Became even louder the following year when African-American musician Questlove discovered on a popular PBS TV show, Finding Your Roots, that he was a descendant of slaves ferried across the Atlantic Ocean in the Clotilda. So now we got Finding Your Roots, bullshitting, lying about child. I ain't. Look at this. This is sad. This is sick. This is sick. Questlove's discovery was followed by an increased focus on Africatown, the post-Civil War settlement founded by Lewis and the other former Clotilda captives. And in 2018, after over a half a century, Hurston's subversive text was finally posthumously published. Barracoon deconstructs the American slave narrative genre by prioritizing uncomfortable truths over clarifying facts. As Hurston herself states in a preface dated April 17th, 1931, her primary goal with the anthropological text is to set down essential truth rather than factive detail, which is often misleading. In order to better delineate the difference between both concepts, a brief overview of the American slave narrative genre is necessary. The central ideological purpose of the pre-Civil War American slave narrative, that is, the autobiographical works by fugitive slaves, was to bolster the anti-slavery movement through vivid and harrowing descriptions of slavery in the American South. In other words, slave narratives hoped to elicit the sympathy of white Northerners, a segment of the nation's population insufficiently acquainted with the horrors of the Southern-style plantation slavery, and therefore most likely to be persuaded to join the abolitionist crusade. Terrible, Terrible. And what did we say early on? I know OTK might still be in the chat. The abolitionists, dirty dogs. Dirty dogs, child. And I think even some things that I was reading about with Eltis was saying some similar things about how these abolitionists were putting out these pictures. Was it Eltis? It might have been Marcus Rediker, one of the two family. I don't want to get it wrong, but they were putting out these photos, these drawings of slave ships, and putting out articles about Southern slavery and all this other stuff, so they can gain sympathy for this particular cause. It's very interesting. It's very, very interesting to me. This is diabolical. So we got to stay on key, stay on code. Pro-slavery proponents resisted by accusing slave narratives of being fictional imagings, ghost written by fanatical white abolitionists. Come on now. Oh my God. This is outrageous. But this is what was going on. In other words, let's read that again. Slave narratives hope to elicit the sympathy of white Northerners, a segment of the nation's population sufficiently acquainted with the horrors of Southern-style plantation slavery, and therefore most likely to be persuaded to join the abolitionist crusade. Pro-slavery proponents resisted by accusing slave narratives of being fictional imagings, ghost-written by fanatical white abolitionists. Child, the girls is lying. The girls been lying. The girls is lying. I cannot take it, okay? But see, we already knew this. And the more and more that we continue to point this out, and the more and more that we continue to talk about it, the more and more it's going to generate conversation. And that's what we need to happen. We need more conversations around it. And a lot of the conversations have been very pivotal to this moment here. It's been outed that these people up here just trying to get a cute little coin. They ostracized this woman for a reason. Due to skepticism about authenticity, facts became a central trope in pre-Civil War slave narratives. They often carry subtitles like "written by himself," and because they generally narrate the fugitive slaves' American odyssey from enslavement in the South to freedom in the North, a great deal of emphasis is placed on the factual accuracy of dates, periods, experiences, and geographic locations. Frederick Douglass' narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave, written by himself, 1845, and William W. Brown's narrative of William W. Brown, a fugitive slave, written by himself, 1847, are two examples of canonical American slave narratives, and in both texts, the authors follow a strict narrative template that emphasizes the veracity of facts. The term fact is generally defined as a communicated message that describes a condition proven to be true or an event proven to have happened. Proven. So, if we're talking about things being based in fact, how have they proven that the slave trade happened? How have they proven that Miss Clotilda happened? How have they even proven, without recordings or anything like that, that any of this is the truth? This emphasis on proving a condition true implies that facts intend to clarify and not complicate. Come on, somebody is. Ooh, this brother is writing, okay? This brother is writing. The clarity of facts in the American slave narrative genre is a comforting aesthetic that underlines core American values like exceptionalism and liberty. In the traditional pre-Civil War slave narrative, the exceptional talents of the enslaved amplifies their humanity, and by factually describing the barbarity of chattel slavery in the South, facts are used to justify the enslaved's plea for and eventual attainment of liberty in the North. In other words, the conflict of slavery is resolved by the acquisition of freedom. After the Emancipation Proclamation abolished slavery in 1863, post-emancipation slave narratives rebelled against the ubiquitous South-North trajectory of prior slave narratives. Works like Henry Clay Bruce's The New Man, 29 Years a Slave, 29 Years a Free Man, reject the notion that the enslaved's dignity and humanity can only be guaranteed by escaping to the North. According to literary scholar William L. Andrews, Bruce and other post-emancipation slave narrative writers argue that a dignified life is determined by diligence in one's duties and pride in a task well done, whether enslaved or free. Hence, the post-Civil War slave narrative often highlights the enslaved's assertion and preservation of selfhood in a contained Southern milieu. Wow. Wow. Y'all. Come on now. Come on now. So they've been lying about slave narratives since after the Emancipation Proclamation. He's talking about that thumbnail is sinister. And is gotta pour out that liquor on that African American shit. Gotta put one up there for the homies. Gotta pour it out for the homies. Rest in peace, African American. Y'all dead out here. In both pre and post Civil War slave narratives, resolution is the central theme. The source of conflict in the pre-Civil War narrative is resolved through the enslaved's attainment of liberty in the North, and the source of conflict in the post-Civil War narrative is resolved when the enslaved or formerly enslaved is able to live a life of dignity in the South. Barracoon sees Hurston's dramatically deviating from both genres by eschewing the factual clarity of resolution and foregrounding the tension of unresolved identities. Hurston's quest for what she calls essential truth is a quest to understand the core pre-captivity humanity of her subject, a humanity that is unburdened by the racialized stigmas and traumas of enslavement. By interrogating the fullness of this pre-captivity humanity and its unresolved tension with post-captivity experiences, the central theme of Hurston's reimagined slave narrative is complication, not resolution. Hold on, let me plug up my computer, y'all. The girl needs some charging. Give me 1 second. Barracoon opens with Hurston's recounting a visit she paid to Lewis in the summer. As she walked towards his porch, she hailed him by his African name, Kasula, and he looked up in surprise. An astonished Lewis proclaims, "Oh Lord, I know it you call my name. Nobody called my name from across the water but you. You always call me, just like I in the African soil." Like the pre-Civil War manumissions, Hurston frames Lewis's story in a manner that highlights the theme she finds most appealing: the essential rift between Lewis and Kasala. Lewis was in his early 20s when the Civil War ended and slaves were granted citizenship. Now an old man in his late 70s, he has lived the rest of his adult life in the U.S. as a so-called free American citizen. While the traditional slave narrative generally concludes with freedom, be it physical or psychological, as a form of resolution, Barracoon opens with freedom as a point of complication. Lewis is legislatively free. This is a fact. The truth, however, is that His so-called freedom did not resolve the existential tensions embedded in his American citizenship. In his place of birth, Lewis is Olule Kasala, a name that exemplifies the linguistic and... So let's talk about this. How the hell he the only one that knows his African name? Didn't no other ancestors know their African names? I just want to know that. They didn't know their African names? But this one person did, right? This is diabolical work. Diabolical. All right, y'all, because I'm about to wrap this up. Because I told myself I was going to try to get some rest before I had to do what I had to do. But this is really, really nasty. So let's keep going. So in his place of birth, Lewis is Olule Kasala, a name that exemplifies the linguistic and cultural sensibilities of his African heritage. However, there's little room for this African orientation in the U.S., so he is forced to adopt the name Cujo Lewis, a new persona, more palatable within the Western sensibilities of his post-captivity home. Interesting. They swear all of us came from Africa. All of this took place. And somehow there's no room for his African orientation. Somehow, now all of a sudden, everything you know about Africa is just gone in the wind, lost forever. None of that makes sense. When we first encounter Lewis in his small Alabama home, he is moving around, fastidiously cleaning and sweeping. One gets the sense that he is trying to quiet the psychological tension of his dueling identities by creating a physical state of order. This possibly explains why Lewis is startled when Hurston calls him Kasala. By calling out his pre-captivity name, the juxtaposition between his past and present is amplified, and he must confront the unresolved tension he is trying to quiet. The opening scene also introduces us to Lewis' unique vernacular. As I stated earlier, Hurston believed that precise transcription was integral to authentically capturing and preserving folklore. Thus, throughout Barracoon, she painstakingly transcribes the inflections and syntax of Lewis's complex vernacular. Painstakingly is crazy. This aesthetic approach to telling his story is another dramatic departure from convention. According to English professor and scholar Salamisha, I think I said that right, Tillet, in traditional slave narratives, authors often stripped away all the vernacular to prove Black humanity. One must remember that during this epoch, Black slaves were classified as property and had no citizenship rights. Thus, their prospects for freedom depended on legitimizing their humanity to white Northerners. Because vernaculars and other folkloric forms of Black Southern culture were usually deemed primitive, slave narratives written in dialects would have arguably had a harder time humanizing the enslaved populace to a cosmopolitan and educated Northern audience. The generate's tendency to discard vernaculars and emphasize an intelligent, more palatable to white readers was therefore a strategically effective aesthetic choice. Interesting. Okay, so they're saying here that ultimately that they designed what they call themselves creating boxing out his complete syntax and using a syntax that's more aesthetically pleasing or palatable to people in the North. So this is why they can explain why certain syntax and shit don't exist, because that don't make sense to me. Because, yeah, that doesn't make sense to me. Unlike Lewis, protagonists of canonical slave narrative texts like Frederick Douglass had a flawless mastery of the English language. the wife of Douglas's slave master, teaches Douglas how to read and write at a young age, and he immediately develops an insatiable appetite for knowledge. As an author, Douglas can be described as a competent wordsmith, well-versed in Western philosophy, and capable of effortlessly weaving essential concepts into his narrative. These descriptions of Douglas are verifiable and thus indisputable facts. However, the overpresentation of figures like Douglas in the American slave narrative genre inadvertently ignores and even erases the multidimensionality of the American slave experience. Unlike Douglas, Lewis was not born in the U.S. and never received a formal Western education. Hurston's decision to keep his vernacular intact is an attempt to honor the truthfulness and dignity of his origins. See? Yeah, they gotta get this together. They gotta get this together. They gotta get this together. They gotta start with the lies. It's too early in the morning for this shit. It is too early in the morning, family. I'm telling you right now. It's like they want to try to keep intact what's already been told about traditional slave narratives. And I'm guessing with her particular novel or her particular writings is not staying in context to that. But then I guess she ended up falling victim to that and still conforming to what was wanted or conforming to what they wanted to be said. This is, I don't care. This is nasty work. They just saying, yeah, exactly. She didn't ask about his African nothing. He just had a certain cadence and syntax. Bad Saint. So all right, hold on, y'all. Traditional slave narratives, as literary scholar Deborah G. Plant points out, seldom explore the incidents that preceded disembarkation and the holding pens and auction blocks of America. Traditional slave narratives, as literary scholar Deborah G. Plant points out, seldom explore the incidents that preceded disembarkation and the holding pens and auction blocks of America. There is an extensive collection of materials, journals, letters, bills of sale, wills about the white captains who ferried slave ships, but very little was known about the everyday lives of their black cargo, especially prior to the capture. Hurston echoes this sentiment in Barracuda's introduction. All these words from the seller, but not one word from the sold. Her decision to begin Barracuda by summoning Kusala, not Lewis, is therefore an attempt to give words to pre-captivity, to give words to pre-captive humanity of the subject, a humanity often absent from factual documents and narratives about the transatlantic slave trade. Boom! What have I been saying? What have I been saying? That's what I kept trying to convey to the professor, David Eltis. Y'all got all of this white captains this, logs this, but y'all have no y'all have no qualitative data to back up the transatlantic slave trade. You all have no stories to accompany the millions of people y'all claim came through here on a slave boat. Several at that. And you mean to tell me nobody's telling their story? Make it make sense. Man, we ain't playing no more games out here with these people. It's scholars that's been calling this stuff out. But see, we like to ignore that because a lot of us want to believe lies. We like lies because the lie is more entertaining than the truth. Y'all like lies. Not all of y'all, but a good amount of y'all like lies, and it's sick. So let me just read that one more time, because without me even having to say it, I've already said this. And it's people saying the same thing. Literary scholars are pointing this out. It says traditional slave narratives, as literary scholar Deborah G. Plant points out, seldom explore the incidents that preceded disembarkation and the holding pens and auction blocks of America. There is an extensive collection of materials, journals, letters, bills of sale, wills, about the white captains who ferried slave ships, but very little is known about the everyday lives of their black cargo, especially prior to capture. Hurston echoes this sentiment in Barracoon's introduction. All these words from the seller, but not one from the sold. Her decision to begin Barracoon by summoning Kosala, not Lewis, is therefore an attempt to give words to the pre-captive humanity of her subject, a humanity often absent from factual documents and narratives about the transatlantic slave trade. In order to understand the man Lewis is, Hurston realized that she must first understand who Lewis was, long before he boarded the Clotilda. The one they claimed that they found, but then they found out that it wasn't the Clotilda, but somehow they still carrying on like they found the Clotilda. Child, I want to ask you many things, Hurston tells Lewis. I want to know who you are and how you came to be a slave, and to what part of Africa do you belong, and how you fared as a slave, and how you managed as a free man. Lewis' response is euphoric. Thank you, Jesus. Somebody come ask about Kuja. I want to tell somebody who I is, so maybe they go in the African soil someday and call my name, and somebody there say, yeah, I know Kosala. Child. Lewis's ecstatic response to Hurston's request reveals that in his post-captivity life, from 1860 to the moment of Hurston's conversations with him in the late 1920s, very few people have acknowledged Kosala, the fully realized identity that became infinitely compromised when he boarded the Clotilda. His response also reveals his longing for African soil, quote, and the shock of being stolen from his home and ferried across the Atlantic Ocean to an entirely new world. Overnight, he lost contact with everyone and everything he had ever known and was forced to live out the rest of his days in a society that refuses to accept him as a legitimate citizen. It must be profoundly disorienting experience. This explains why he hopes that Hurston's transcription of his story will reach African soil, quote, and perhaps he will experience a spiritual reunion with his past if someone recognizes his name and say, yes, I know Kosala, end quote. His longing to reunite with Kosala is an effort to heal his essential traumas by reconciling his two lives and two identities. As I previously stated, Hurston is the amanuensis, tasked with documenting Lewis's oral account of his life, and she used her editorial authority to make the tension between Lewis and Kosala the most consequential theme in Barracoon. Some might argue that this approach is problematic because she, not Lewis, picks and chooses which elements of his life to highlight. While this is a legitimate accusation, it is undercut by the functionality of intent in Hurston's method. Unlike pre-Civil War amanuensis of slave narratives, she does not present her transcription of Lewis's story as uncritical or unembellished. Her intention to emphasize the conflict between pre and post captivity identities is unambiguously stated in the opening scene. And as the paragraphs below reveal, she uses various literary devices such as suspense, foreshadowing, and irony to frame and foreground her clearly stated objective. Furthermore, Lewis's euphoric response implies that Hurston has the uncoerced endorsement of her subject. In other words, both the amanuensis and her subject are in agreement on which elements of Lewis's life should be underscored in the narrative. However, because Lewis has no control of how Hurston will intellectually perceive and textually frame his story, his consent is not a guarantee that her transcription will accurately reflect the truthfulness of his thoughts. He therefore decides to assert his agency by shrewdly controlling how and when he reveals relevant information to Hurston. by having control over the content and duration of his conversations with Hurston. He ensures that her transcription is, at least to some extent, an accurate reflection of the tone and pace of his thoughts. So I'm going to just hold off right there because time is getting away from me. And I would love to continue to, go more deeper into this. And, I appreciate everybody coming through. It means a lot to the kid. It really does. And I had a good time this morning because it's going on 2 hours. Hey, Copper Goddess, Sister Freedom, Daughter of the Sea Dots. Hey, y'all gonna hit me up about that situation, Sister Freedom? Text me. Okay. So anywho, I just wanted y'all to, that's a good question. I don't know if he was paid or not, Bad Saint. I don't know if he was paid or not, but I know that, we could finish reading that. It has like 10 or 11 more pages, but if I ain't have to go, I really would read more because, like I said, I have a whole day ahead of me. And, y'all know how that goes. So y'all just got to know and understand, like, all of this stuff that they be trying to tell us, you know what I'm saying, without verifiable proof and evidence. And I'm talking about real facts. Things that can be proven. Not what somebody is writing down and saying is true, but what's actually true. Okay? That's how you figure out what facts are. That's how you go about finding factual information. That's how you go about finding proof. It's to figure out what has been proven. These folks lied about finding the Clotilda wreckage. And I just want to show it one more time. One more time. These folks is liars. Because this really is what we're here for. This is really what this is about. For real.
After 3 days of examination, experts have several reasons proving this wasn't the Clotilda. First, the remains were too big to be the Clotilda. Information from historical documents also didn't match. We learned today that other shipwrecks were found, and the Alabama Historical Commission would like to examine those in the future. They also want to keep looking for the Clotilda, the last known ship to bring slaves to U.S. from Africa.
Just because this was not the Clotilda does not mean that the Clotilda is not out there somewhere. So we're going to go back to Montgomery, start strategizing on what the next step is to try to get funding.
I feel like there's still hope because
She said they're going to go back and start strategizing on how they're going to get funding. They just want money. Funding to do what? Funding to try to dig up into the mud? To find nothing? Come on now.
Lived a long time, and me passing this history down to my children and my grandkids, they'll be able to know that their grandmama worked towards finding a solution to the real truth about the Clotilda.
Jones says she would like to complete a survey on what's in the middle of the channel buried deep below the mud. Reporting live in the newsroom, Elizabeth Rodo, Fox 10 News.
All right, y'all. So y'all see what it is. Y'all know what time it is. And I actually got to go. But y'all understand where we going with this, man. And we not having it no more. The truth is here. It's out. And we're going to keep on cooking on that knowledge and cooking on that truth because enough is enough. So on that note, y'all, I really do got to go, unfortunately. I hate that I have to go. I can't spend more time with y'all today, but like y'all stay safe out here. Peace, love, and light. And y'all can catch the playback. You know what I'm saying? I just kind of wanted to read a little bit of the article, kind of trying to, ultimately proving while I'm saying that this is cap. So I appreciate y'all. Love y'all down. Peace.